Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Good morning, hello, welcome to our programme on the future of Labour. We are live in Nottingham this morning. Which of these men do you want to lead the Labour Party into the next general election? Maybe it's neither, but only these two are standing in this particular Labour leadership contest. Jeremy Corbyn, who defied the odds to win a Labour leadership competition a year ago, but has since been dogged with criticism from many of his own MPs. Or Owen Smith, a relatively new Labour MP, elected in 2010. Even he admits he's not a household name in his own household. But will that change come September the 24th when the new leader is announced? In a sentence, gentlemen, how confident are you that you're going to win this particular contest, Mr. Corbyn?
I feel very optimistic about it. We received the support of over 280 constituency Labour parties, and we're touring the whole country doing rallies and meetings in areas where there is Labour support, but also in Conservative-held areas to take the campaign to the Tories of the kind of Britain we want to live in, where there is decent housing, good educational opportunities and a fully functioning, free NHS for all.
How confident? How confident can you be, Mr. Smith, of winning, particularly now those constituency Labour parties, nearly 300 are going to go for Jeremy Corbyn?
Well, they've been narrow, lots of those votes, and I'm confident that I'm persuading people all over the country. I was in Oxford last night. I'm going to be all over the country throughout the rest of the campaign, persuading people that we need to get ready for government. And at the moment, I think that means we need to change the leader of the Labour Party. It means we need to be a bit more credible, speaking more broadly across the country, still radical, still sticking to our roots and our beliefs, but perhaps speaking a bit more directly to the country.
Let me tell you a little bit about our audience makeup here. Around 100 voters, made up entirely of people who are either Labour members, Labour supporters, or people who say they would consider voting Labour in a future general election, depending on who the next leader is. A third of our audience, those sitting here, already know who they want to support. They want to support Jeremy Corbyn. People here haven't yet made up their mind. Some of them have told me they are here today to hear both contenders and may reach a conclusion by 11 o'clock. That may not happen, it may, we'll see. So they haven't yet made up their mind, they don't yet know. They want to hear the two men in their own words, effectively. Over here, this third of the audience, they're made up of people who support Owen Smith. Yeah. Why you are supporting the people that the man that you're supporting.
Yeah, I support Jeremy.
Can you introduce yourself, sir?
My name's Peter Gates. I work in the School of Education at the University of Nottingham, and I support Jeremy really because of his honesty, his integrity and his compassion. I've been to a number of meetings that Jeremy's spoken at, and at each of those he's been an inspiration. He's been an inspiration, I think, to people in a cross-section of the country. I think he's been an MP for over 30 years, and during that time he's been consistently supporting progressive causes, even though that may have been difficult for him sometimes with colleagues in the Parliamentary Labour Party. At the end of it, I think Jeremy is a thoroughly decent bloke, and he doesn't deserve to be treated in the way that he's been treated so far by members of Parliament.
We'll definitely come back to your point about the way some members of Parliament have treated their own leader. Hello, sir. Good morning.
Hello. I'm Steve. I'm a solicitor. I'm a long-standing member of the Labour Party, and I'm voting for Owen Smith. Let us remember our history. Labour exists to get things done. That is the most important thing. If we don't get power, we get nothing done. It's not a question of being left or right or anything. Let us remember the health service from the left and Aaron Bevan. Let us remember what others have done. Secondly, Labour has been a broad church in the past. Remember again, history lesson, what Harold Wilson said in the 60s, Labour is a broad church. We are in danger of becoming a narrow church. If we become a narrow church, we will not win. Finally, Europe. I am passionately pro-Europe. I am passionately opposed to Brexit. I was extremely disappointed with you, Jeremy, if I can address you direct, in your role in the campaign. You did not campaign hard enough. You did not go to the northeast. Why? I don't know. That is a small example. Just let me speak, and you can have you can talk shortly. Okay?
I think. Can I move the conversation on? And Mr. Corbyn will have a chance, of course, to come back on your point about...
Yes, fine. But my general point is there. And I do not think that we should lie down and accept Brexit.
Okay.
We should fight for our place in Europe. It is too important.
All right, thank you, sir. Hello, good morning.
Hello, I'm Laura. I'm from Lincoln. I wanted to bring a voice for the new members. I was under the understanding that Labour was the party that welcomed everyone. That clearly isn't the case when it comes to new members at the minute.
Why do you say that?
I feel like we are pigeonholed into a certain section of society. I feel that our reasons are questioned as to why we've joined the party. I feel like I'm told who I support, why I should support them. I feel like I'm told I'm not as important as people.
Who is saying this to you?
I spend a lot of time on Twitter, I'm really sorry, but that's where I get a lot of my feedback from reading the media as well, the names that I've been called. I'm a mum on maternity leave. I'm no cult member. I feel quite strongly about passion and getting involved in politics, and I now feel that maybe I've made a massive mistake because I'm not welcome, I'm not important, and I won't play a part in the party in the future because my membership is questioned, my values are questioned in order of, my worth of paying £25 to get a vote. And I'm wondering, what will come of the future and why should people join the Labour Party? Is that the kind of thing that we do?
Was it a big deal for you to find that 25 quid to pay?
As I said, I'm on maternity leave. Things are tight. So, it was a choice between doing something, and I'm not saying that my kids didn't get fed because, God, she did. But £25 makes a lot of difference to someone. And why should I have to pay to show that I want to be here and I want to stay and I want to play a part and I actually want to be the future of the Labour Party? I would love to sit where you guys are now and do that. How can I do that when I'm told that maybe my place in the Labour Party isn't secure?
Future leader, potentially, of Labour. Wow. Thank you. Hi. Good morning.
Good morning. My name's Karen. I'm a planning consultant with my own small business, and I'm a very long-standing Labour member. I am unconvinced at the moment that either of you are actually suitable to lead this party.
Why do you say that?
I feel there's been a lot of squabbling. At the end of the day, there seems to have been lost sight that you are elected members, you are here to represent the electorate and the community, and the whole thing seems to have degenerated down to a playground type squabble. I'm yet to be convinced. I'm here today because I would hope that one or both of you will convince me that you are suitable and appropriate and capable of leading this party and taking on the Conservatives in the next election.
OK, thank you. Let's hear from both Jeremy Corbyn and Owen Smith, both briefed to tell us in about a minute a little bit about themselves. This is for not just people here in the room, but obviously people watching across the country. Mr. Corbyn.
This is the non-political slot, is it?
Well, we're going to talk about politics for 2 hours, but we need to communicate in an effective way across the country.
Yeah, I've been the MP for Islington for a long time, since 1983. I live in the area. I love the constituency and the community, and I get a lot from meeting people. I'm very much involved with local community events and charities and so forth. And I learn a lot from talking to people, because everybody you meet knows something you don't know. But I also think it's important in life to have a balance in what you do and not become obsessive in your job. And so I do a lot of other things. I run, I have an allotment, I read very widely, I make things at home, and I enjoy cycling very much indeed, and I spend as much time as I can on my bike because it's a way of getting great exercise. It's the most perfect form of technology.
But you know Jason Kenny.
And it gets you very... No, I'm absolutely no Jason Kenny, but I did have the pleasure of being interviewed by Sir Bradley Wiggins for Radio 4 last Christmas, and he thought my bike was a bit passé, and he was right, but he didn't offer me a carbon fibre frame at the same time, which would have been nice. And so I think in life you have to keep a balance of things, and so understanding people, understanding our environment and society, but above all being prepared to read widely, think differently.
What book are you reading at the moment?
I'm reading a book at the moment called The Bones of Grace, which is a novel written by a Bangladeshi writer who became a graduate in Harvard, then went back to Bangladesh and then worked very hard defending people who were employed as shipbreakers on the beaches near Chittagong, and it's become quite violent, the novel, in the way that some of those workers have been treated and the life they lead and the corruption that goes on in Chittagong. I haven't got to the end of it, so I can't tell you the outcome, but so far it doesn't look very promising.
All right. Owen Smith, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm reading a book called Purity by Jonathan Franzen, which is nothing to do with the Labour Party.
Okay.
It's in no way ironic. Well, I haven't been an MP for 30 years. I've been MP for 6 years. I was a BBC journalist for 10 years at the beginning of my career. I was then somebody who worked for the last Labour government on the peace process in Northern Ireland for 3 years, and then I was somebody who worked for big business, for 2 big companies, Pfizer and Amgen. And I'm racked with nerves today, not because of appearing on this programme, because I'm looking forward to this, but because the Smith household is expecting GCSE results next week and A-level results tomorrow, so I'm looking forward to going home from here to see my son Jack, whom I haven't seen for a couple of weeks, to be with him tomorrow when he gets his A-level results. One of the things I do share with Jeremy is I too am an allotmenteer. We had to get rid of ours last year because my wife started work as a school teacher and we couldn't find the time to keep it up, but I'm just as fond as Jeremy is growing beans.
Good.
You can share my allotment.
Yeah, I would like some beans.
You could share his allotment, he said. I don't know if you caught that. There's an image to conjure up, the two of you on your...
Two of us.
On Mr Corbyn's
the two
allotment
of us,
together.
sleeves rolled up, digging for Britain.
Digging!
I'd enjoy that.
Debating the variety of potatoes.
Yeah.
Yes, digging for
I
Britain
like
or digging a
smiles.
hole even deeper, who knows. Right, some comments from you already from around the UK. This text from Rob. I'm a Labour member, but I'm concerned about Jeremy Corbyn's ability to be Prime Minister. This tweet from Roz. Should the Labour Party suspend and investigate any member that describes others as stormtroopers? We'll certainly ask that question in a sec. This tweet from Karen. David Miliband would win a general election, but I'll be voting for Owen Smith in the current contest. Last year, I voted for JC. This email from Bill. I've voted Labour most of my life. I'm 64 now, except when Michael Foot was Labour leader. I see Corbyn and Smith as dinosaurs. The world has moved on from when Britain needed nationalisation after the Second World War, when investment on the scale necessary wasn't available. I've been impressed by Theresa May, and if she lives up to her words, she will get my vote. How does that make you feel when you hear that?
Terrible, absolutely terrible. But we know there are, unfortunately, potentially 2 million Labour voters who voted Labour at the last election who are right now contemplating voting Tory because we are at such low ebb in the polls.
I think our friends should think about the rail industry, for example. We built it, we've invested in it. The train operating companies are making huge profits out of it. Shouldn't those profits go to the public instead?
Yeah. He says,
Dead right.
OK, well, since Labour lost the general election in 2015 and Jeremy Corbyn was elected leader, the party has been riddled with infighting and mudslinging. Here's a reminder of how they got to this point.
We are saying the Conservatives are the largest party.
Friends, this is not the speech I wanted to give today. And now it's time for someone else to take forward the leadership of this party.
$251,000.
We don't have to be unequal. It doesn't have to be unfair. Poverty isn't inevitable. Things can, and they will, change.
Have you changed your position on airstrike? In the car.
Oh, he's a good and decent man, but he is not a leader.
Why is Adolf Hitler a vote winner, sir? You're Nazi apologists. You're Nazi apologists. Rewriting history. Rewriting history.
I believe we have to vote to remain in order to defend investment, defend jobs, defend workers' rights.
For all his qualities, I don't believe that leader is Jeremy.
I don't think Jeremy
is in a position to provide the leadership.
I feel that I've served in the best way I can. Today I had to go.
I believe that he's got the support of the membership. It's likely that Jeremy Corbyn will be continuing as leader of the Labour Party.
Stay together, strong and united.
This party is teetering on the brink of extinction.
Good evening all, lovely to see you all. It would be a good thing if Labour MPs got behind their leader.
172 voted no confidence in your leadership.
What camera am I?
Okay.
Am I on this camera? Let me just say, we've got to stop this now.
You know it's a remarkable state of affairs because the music was incredibly dramatic. Tell us what you think about what's happening with the Labour Party. Let's hear from you, and then we'll hear from Mr Corbyn and Mr Smith. Hello.
Firstly, good morning, gentlemen, and thank you for coming to Nottingham. My name is Dale, and I live and work in the city. My question is, there is an undeniable rift, a chasm that exists at the moment between the PLP and the core membership. Whichever of you two gentlemen win the leadership contest, you must fundamentally have the ability to heal this rift and unite the party moving forward.
So what's your question, sir? Do you bring the microphone a bit closer? What's the question?
If Mr Corbyn and Mr Smith could allude to how they're actually going to heal the rift,
okay.
I'd be interested.
If you win, Owen Smith, how do you unite the membership and your own Labour MPs in the Commons?
I think the first thing to say, and it's in answer to that question and the new member who spoke earlier on, my experience is that all Labour members that I meet, the vast majority, new members, old members, they all join for the same reason I did. They all believe in wanting to make Britain a fairer place. They all want to improve their communities. They're all worried about public services. They all want the Labour Party to be a catalyst for change. Well, I think we've just got to start being honest that there is far more that unites us than divides us in the Labour Party.
If you don't want to say so, that's a slogan which you accuse Mr.
No, but if you're
Corbyn.
the leader, I think you've got to make that the heart of how you address the party. So I don't think you're right. I don't think there is a chasm between the PLP and the membership. I think both the PLP and the membership broadly want the same thing. Well, there's laughter over there. I think there has been a false narrative created that there is a great big chasm. What there is a chasm between the faith of a large proportion of the PLP in Jeremy and the membership, or half the membership. And the reason for that is I think we've been closer to Jeremy. We're the people who work with him. If you work in a company or in a council and you look every day at the way in which the leader of that body leads your group, and if they don't do a good job of it, then it's fair enough for you to say we don't want that leadership.
Okay. There was derisive laughter from some Jeremy Corbyn supporters sitting in this section when Mr Smith said there wasn't this chasm between members and Labour MPs. Tell me why.
I think the laughter is around the democracy, actually, and that brings me to my point that I wanted to make in a question to Owen. My name's Bev, I'm a trade unionist and I'm elected.
Do you know what? Before you ask your question, I'm so sorry, I would like Mr Corbyn to answer the first question, which was how you unite. If you win this contest, how do you unite members and Labour MPs?
Thanks for your question. A year ago I was elected leader of the party. Fundamentally the message I was putting was we had to change the economic message we were putting to one that was opposed to austerity and in favour of redistribution rather than the austerity light that we were offering at the last general election. I appointed a shadow cabinet that included people who absolutely had opposed my election as leader, and I wanted to create a broad-based shadow cabinet and broad-based team, and I will do exactly the same again if re-elected in September, because I do want the PLP to come together.
And those Labour MPs. It didn't work last time. Why would doing the same thing work this time?
I would ask those Labour MPs to remember that they have been elected like I have, like Owen has, as Labour MPs, we have a huge responsibility to represent our party and the people that have elected us in Parliament, and that means we've got to work together on the issues of austerity, education, housing, health, all those things, and I will reach out to them and invite them to come on board and work together to achieve that.
To be fair to yourself, you have already done that on a number of occasions, and it continues to fail.
Well, I was faced with a series of organised and orchestrated resignations over a period of a few days. And I've since appointed other people to the shadow cabinet who have worked extremely hard. Angela Rayner, for example, has worked extraordinarily hard as shadow education secretary. And if elected again, I will try and reach out to all members of the PLP and invite them to get on board, because there are an awful lot of issues that we can agree on and we can take the fight to the Tories, and that really is what Labour supporters, Labour members and millions of other voters want us to do.
Why the groans? Why the groans when Mr Corbyn talked about orchestrated and organised resignations from his shadow cabinet?
Because there have been... Oh, is that on? Yeah. Because there have been a lot of reports from your MPs who actually weren't against you and were probably centre leaning and were in the middle of the party, who you just didn't work with, like the MP who had cancer recently, who was fired, then reinstated, all without her knowledge. And Jess Phillips recently did a thing about where she talked about she came to you with reports of sexual harassment and abuse, and you just didn't. Your office didn't do anything. She got shut out by AIDS. And it seems from me there was one interview where you were being followed.
Let Mr Corbyn respond to those 2 points.
Listen, I have dealt with very strongly and very robustly any complaints about abuse on social media, personal abuse or abuse of anybody else. It has no place in any political party. I proposed, and it was agreed unanimously, a statement to the National Executive of the party on behaviour, on racism within our party. That is the position we have. It is not acceptable and not tolerated by me or anybody else, and we have instituted an inquiry into this, and rule changes will follow in the party conference. By the way, Labour will be the first political party to have a clear statement of anti-racism within its party.
What kind of rule changes will stop?
Rule change to provide a due process of representation, adjudication and appeal.
What does that mean?
Well, it means that anyone that's accused of making a wrong remark, a racist remark, will have a right to put their case, have a right to representation, and of course will be suspended in the meantime while the investigation goes on. It will not be done just by a remote grouping of people.
Okay. Why will that stop abuse?
It won't necessarily stop abuse, but what it will do is make sure there's a clear line of decision-making, and it will also mean there's a clear line of culture saying we do not accept any of this in any shape or form within the party from whoever it comes.
Okay.
For example, a lot of the way you've responded to it, for example, with the Jess Phillips thing, when women in particular, when women in particular come out to you with stories of abuse, the way you respond to saying, "Well, I've been abused too," but it's different.
No, I did not.
As a man, you can't say that. They're experiencing different abuse. And it seems that you don't understand.
I have made it absolutely clear that any kind of abuse is totally unacceptable in any form. And that is the position of the party.
But then why is it still happening?
That's the position of all of us. And I should imagine it's your position as well.
Yes, it is.
Good.
At the weekend you said to The Observer the best way to deal with abuse was to ignore it.
No. What I said was that personal abuse to me I ignore because I'm not prepared to respond to the levels of personal abuse that I receive. So far as anyone else is concerned, I think they should report it, they should have it investigated, and it should be closed down.
Owen Smith, in an interview on our programme a few weeks ago, you said to me that you thought Jeremy Corbyn encouraged that kind of abuse.
Well, I don't remember saying that. Maybe I did. Well, I think I'm very clear about it. I think Jeremy hasn't stamped down on it hard enough. Jeremy does say quite often when you're asked, Jeremy, that you're abused, I'm abused, and that somehow is okay.
No, I don't say that, neither do you.
You said it you said it 2 minutes ago. It was just reported to you. It's what you said to The Observer. And you do quite often, when you're asked about the question of abuse, respond by saying, well, we're all abused and we should ignore it. And I think the thing that people feel in the party is that you haven't stamped down on it hard enough.
What
that
would you do
have
that
been,
would be different?
Well, for example, I think in some of the instances where we've had anti-Semitic abuse within the Labour Party, we should kick those people out of the party and they should stay out. There isn't any place for it. And I think there have been occasions when Jeremy has, just not seemed bothered enough by it. And the proof
so
is...
So you'd go straight for expulsion rather than any kind of inquiry?
I think the proof is that lots of my female MP colleagues feel that Jeremy wasn't supportive enough. Lots of the Jewish Labour MP colleagues feel that Jeremy wasn't quick enough to condemn anti-Semitic abuse. And we're the Labour Party, and we're having a debate on national television here about anti-Semitism and misogyny within the Labour Party. That should make us all deeply ashamed, in my view. And we should be being much stronger than simply saying, well, abuse is bad whenever it comes and I'm going to ignore it.
Owen, there's 19 people been suspended. Most of those cases predate my leadership. They're under investigation. A decision will be made on them. You know that as well as I do. We have put forward a very clear statement and very clear policy on this. That's something you and I completely agree on. Can't we agree that we want this party to be one that's inclusive, that's open, that's welcoming, that doesn't tolerate any kind of foul language, racism in any form whatsoever? That I'm sure we're agreed.
We do want that. We do want that. But I think that... And maybe we should just be clear about this. There are shades of hard left opinion in Britain that have drifted into anti-Semitic abuse because of their concerns about Israel. And that is at the heart of the concerns that many in the party have. Look, this is absolutely true. Nobody is going to deny that on the hard left of politics in this country and elsewhere across the West there has been anti-Semitism. It's absolutely fact that that's been the case.
All right.
And I think that the point that people feel is that we need to make sure, just on the hard right and on the hard left of politics there's been that.
Okay.
What people feel is that we've not been, at the very best, we've been insensitive to those concerns, and we should have been much more sensitive. We should be the party that speaks for decency and tolerance always in this country. And for us to be mired in a debate about anti-Semitism is truly shaming of us all.
OK. Hello, do introduce yourself. Hi.
I'm Francesca, I'm from Derby, and I've been a member of the Labour Party for 3 years now. And recently I've been considering going to the Labour Party conference in September. And I would feel more comfortable going to a Conservative conference saying I'm a Labour supporter than going to the Labour Party conference saying I'm an Owen Smith supporter.
Wow. Seriously?
Seriously, looking at I personally haven't had much abuse, but that's because my presence online is very small. But I went to the Youth Labour Party conference, and there were some things that went on there that really weren't acceptable. And I'll admit, it was on both sides. But I definitely felt, just because I didn't support Jeremy, or I wasn't a massive supporter of Jeremy at the time, that I was somehow different to other people, and that there was just so much going on at all of these conferences that it's just sometimes I don't feel comfortable going to large groups of Labour members.
Well, you should feel comfortable at any Labour Party meeting and any Labour Party conference, whatever your point of view, absolutely. I was at the Labour Youth Conference for the last day of it. I spoke to it, and I spoke to a lot of members there. Clearly, there had been an awful lot of arguments the previous day, some of which had been, I think, deeply unpleasant. Indeed, we asked for a report on it on the National Executive and looked at the way in which the Labour Youth Conference is run to make sure that it is more open, more inclusive and absolutely tolerant of differences and differences of opinion. That surely is the Labour way of doing
Can I ask you for an example of what you said was unacceptable, bearing in mind it's the school holidays, it's morning television. Can you give me an example of something that went on that you found abhorrent?
There was Twitter abuse. I don't really want to mention any names.
Of course not.
But there was Twitter abuse against all sides of the party. I specifically remember one girl had to go out crying, and she was a supporter of Jeremy. And I felt that that was really unfair on her, just because she supported Jeremy. There was nothing wrong with what she said, but it's the general behaviour. It's not on either side.
Isn't it some people forget that Twitter is something that is going to be there for all time? They make totally uncalled for, unpleasant remarks. It happens in all elements, all walks of life, and it shouldn't happen. And people should remember that if you say something on Twitter, say something on Facebook, it's basically there for the whole world at any time. Well, hang on, and we're against it. I'm sure you are too.
We are. I am, absolutely. But there's a reason it's happening, Jeremy, and it's because we've become divided between people who are supportive of you and the rest of the Labour Party. And the truth is, unfortunately, some people seem to feel that you're the only socialist in the Labour Party. Some people seem to feel that you're the only guardian of our values, because you voted against the last Labour government a lot. And the truth is, I'm not a red Tory, I'm not a Blairite, I'm a socialist, same as you, but I am being castigated on the media. Well, again, they laugh, but I'm just telling the truth. I've never considered myself a Blairite, I've always considered myself a socialist, but unfortunately, in this current climate, if I'm not supporting Jeremy, I'm both of those things. And all of the PLP members are all of those things. And we are not, we are all...
You must acknowledge that, Mr Corbyn. If people are not supporting
in the Labour
Party. They feel that they're kind of castigated as either conspiracy theorists or not pure enough, as Owen Smith says.
Well, in my experience, there has been and always has been huge levels of debate within the Labour Party. Sometimes
but the atmosphere has become toxic.
Well, how do you know?
Because of the stories that people hear.
Because I attend large numbers of Labour events all over the country. At the moment, we're doing a leadership campaign. Before that, I attended large numbers of Labour events where there were people of all shades of opinion having an intelligent, respectful discussion and debate. Okay. That is how we should do things at all times.
People here, do you think the atmosphere has become toxic?
Yeah. Do you know why that is, though?
Do you introduce yourself? Hello.
My name's Chris. I returned to the Labour Party because of Mrs Corbyn. I went to the Greens during the Blair administration, and the fact that they were reneging on so many manifesto promises, private finance initiatives with the NHS. I work in mental health for the NHS. Iraq War, right, so Mr Smith, Owen, you mentioned a word which is very, very poignant for me when we're talking about politics, and it's narrative. How is narrative built? How do we construct our perceptions, perceptions orbit events, and how are these perceptions orchestrated or developed? They're developed largely through media. Now, before Jeremy Corbyn was even elected, he was being brandished as unelectable, this dangerous left-wing rogue. He rebelled against his government, so many times, without looking at the actual detail of what he rebelled against. He rebelled against some very principled things, chiefly the Iraq War. I remember him talking in 2003 about the Iraq War and how these narratives have been formed. So this man comes about who's the embodiment of so many principles which exposes so many other MPs within the Parliamentary Labour Party. We can all look online, we can look at people's voting records. Owen Smith has a very credible voting record, which I agree with a lot of his positions, but a lot of the people that orchestrated the coup
not to make speeches.
haven't. Sorry. To address this lady who suffered abuse in Derby, I think we aren't looking at the mediums strong enough. So Twitter lends itself to an incredible amount of saturation. When people start, I mean, I'm getting passionate and just talking about it, but people get passionate and they lose sight of what the discussion is, because discussions get debased and narrowed into sound bites in the mainstream media.
Well, do you know what I'm going to do, Martin? For our audience, again, across the UK as well as here in the room, I want to bring them a film which talks about the history of this kind of toxic environment, which I know you say is not necessarily accurate, but let's just have a look at some of the facts in the last 12 months or so. There has been this report into anti-Semitism. There have been those allegations from various female Labour MPs, as you know, as our guest over here mentioned. This is what Jim Reid has put together, and it's the facts. When does democratic debate stop and intimidation begin? Allegations of abuse in Labour really started with the Syria war vote. Around a quarter of the party's MPs voted against the leadership and 4 airstrikes. A number of online threats were made against those MPs. Senior party figures called for the abuse to stop. I'm asking you what your leaders should do about the bullying that's going on of your colleagues.
A firm line needs to be taken, a code of conduct around social media. There cannot be abuse.
Some of the threats were blamed on activists linked to Momentum, the pressure group set up to support Jeremy Corbyn's leadership campaign. There was talk of unsupportive MPs being sacked or deselected if they didn't fall into line. Momentum insisted it wasn't organising deselections and said it strongly disapproved of bullying.
You're Nazi apologists. You're Nazi apologists. Rewriting history.
A few months later, and allegations of a different kind of abuse in Labour. This time, Ken Livingstone and Labour MP Naz Shah were both suspended from the party after claims comments they made were anti-Semitic or anti-Jewish. An independent inquiry was launched into racism in Labour.
Morning, Mr Corbyn. Why are you continuing to hold on, Mr Corbyn?
Then it became clear that Jeremy Corbyn would face a leadership challenge.
Thank you so much for coming along.
A brick was thrown through the window of the constituency office of his early rival, Angela Eagle. Is it true you've had death threats?
I'm told I've had death threats. The police are looking into it.
More than 40 female Labour MPs signed a letter warning about rape and death threats. Mr Corbyn's challenger, Owen Smith, said not enough was being done to clamp down on misogyny in the party. Do you think he has encouraged it?
I don't know, but I think he's not been strong enough. I think he has genuinely not understood what a grave problem this is.
It's a claim Jeremy Corbyn strongly and firmly denies. He points out, too, he's also been the subject of much abuse and adds there should be dignity even when there is disagreement.
Where there are disagreements in our party, we settle them through democratic means. No coups, no intimidation, no abuse.
So those are some of the facts, much more from the audience. Could I just ask you, Mr Corbyn, about the report into anti-Semitism? Shami Chakrabarti carried it out, published June the 30th. People want to know what date you offered her peerage.
After that, at the end of July. When the day the Prime Minister resigned, I understood we would get one nomination to the House of Lords. We may get more later on. And I felt that somebody with her record as a human rights lawyer, her record as standing up for the liberties of everybody, would make an enormous contribution to the House of Lords. And I think, actually, everybody should welcome that. She's somebody of enormous talent and was General Secretary of Liberty for a long time and then decided to move on in her life.
Do you accept it? So on the day David Cameron resigned, you offered it to her. What did she say?
She said she was very pleased to accept it, and she would work very hard and take the Labour whip in the Lords.
Do you accept this accusation of bias, that you asked her to carry out the report? She then joined the Labour Party. She carried out the report which said there wasn't widespread anti-Semitism within the Labour movement. Then you offered her a peerage.
Anyone that knows Shami Chakrabarti would know that she's a person of the most incredible intellectual rigor and strength. Can I finish? Intellectual rigor and strength, and she produced a report. She met a very large number of people. She produced a report which has proposed a series of rule changes and a process of educational involvement within the party, which was well received by the entirety of the national executive of the party, and I hope it will now go through.
Do you accept that the sequence of events leads to some to see that there is a perception of bias?
I hope nobody would do that. They would recognise Shami as somebody of great value and great strength to our society, as somebody who will stand up for human rights and liberty of everybody in this country.
Okay. Morning. Hi, good morning.
Hi, my name's Jane. I'm from Ashfield TLP, just a young Labour member. With just 4% of the Jewish Labour movement voting for you, Jeremy, if you become elected as leader again, what policies are you going to put in place to make them feel included in the Labour Party?
I will obviously meet the Jewish Labour movement, as indeed I've met many other Jewish organisations, Jewish Socialist Group and many others who have given me a lot of very helpful advice. I've also had meetings with the Board of Deputies and others, and I would continue that dialogue and that inclusion with them, because the history of the whole Jewish community, the abominable way they've been treated historically by the Nazis and others, but also a huge radical tradition of the Jewish community through the Bund, many other great causes. And so I would reach out to them in the same way that I want to reach out to all communities. The Labour family must be inclusive of all communities.
Yeah,
despite the report, is it still a big issue?
Yeah, I've got friends who joined the Labour Party the day after we lost the election. Those friends resigned the day that you became leader, and they're Jewish friends of mine. So getting them back on board, I'm struggling at the moment because they just don't believe that this is a safe party for them to be a part of.
And if Owen Smith was elected in this contest, would they rejoin, do you think? Have they told you that?
They'd certainly consider it.
Okay. Anti-Semitism in the Labour movement. I mean, the report was carried out by Shami Chakrabarti. Some people said it was a whitewash. Others warmly received it and said the rules, the recommendations that she put out there should help alleviate this. What do you think?
Well, I've met in the last couple of weeks and months with a lot of representatives of the Jewish community and the Jewish Labour community, and I think the proof of the pudding of the Chakrabarti report is they don't think it is adequate. They feel fundamentally that it doesn't acknowledge the extent of the problem in the Labour movement, and that is why I think one of the reasons they've lost faith in Jeremy. They did nominate me this week, and I'm very proud that the Jewish Labour movement have done that.
There's a great big sigh from somebody over here. I'm not sure why.
I don't know why either, because I don't think any of us should be sighing about something as important as Labour appealing to one of the communities that's traditionally supported us. At the moment, it's around. At the moment, I'm told it's about 8% of the Jewish community would consider voting Labour right now, and they've traditionally looked to Labour to represent them. So we should all be very concerned about that.
Okay. Hello.
Hi, my name's Bev. I'm a trade unionist. I'm an elected member of my National Executive Committee of my union PCS, which is the National Executive Committee are supporting Jeremy in this. What I wanted to bring back, though, is the emphasis of Labour history, but also what I said earlier about being an elected member. As far as I'm concerned, the Labour Party and myself as a trade unionist believe at the core of things is democracy. For me, Jeremy is elected as our leader for the Labour Party. Some people might not like that. The PLP and those MPs are elected by members to be the voice of those members in the parliamentary arena. So at the end of the day, I've also seen, for example, Owen, yourself, you've said on a previous debate that regarding the EU referendum, that you would hold a second one. Now, I disagree with the EU referendum result. I'm a Remain, and I was on the doorstep with other Labour MPs campaigning for an in vote and a Remain vote. But at the end of the day, that is democracy. Okay. That is what we hold at the core of our principles.
Can I ask you then what you feel about the fact that this contest is even taking place?
I think it's disgraceful and disappointing that the members' voices are not being heard. At the end of the day, those MPs are there to represent us as ordinary members and voted them, not for their own views and not for their own careers.
You're doing it to further your own career.
No, I'm a trade unionist as well, with trade unions that are allied to the Labour Party.
Even trade unionists could also be doing this to further their own career.
I'm with trade unions that are affiliated to the Labour Party, and I think that's important to point out. The other thing I'd say is Jeremy used to believe that we should have an election to the leadership of the Labour Party every year. He said so many times in the past. So quite why he's now worried about there being, or indeed his supporters about there being, a challenge, because it's not a coup, it's a challenge, it's a contest to be the leader of the Labour Party. And crucially, of course, I'm elected by my constituents in Pontypridd. So whilst I am here to represent the Labour manifesto on which I stood, a Labour manifesto much of which Jeremy didn't support, I'm also here to represent my people in Pontypridd. And I'm very worried that my people in Pontypridd will not have a Labour government in Westminster to support them, to support the Welsh Labour government with Jeremy as leader.
Remember, we've got a third of the audience who support Owen Smith, a third who support Jeremy Corbyn, and this group of people here who don't yet know and may choose neither in the end. Who here, and please a loud yes or no, who here thinks Owen Smith, as leader, could win a general election against Theresa May and the Conservatives? Yeah. Okay, and what about Jeremy Corbyn? Could he do that? Yeah. So, I mean, actually, the most important people didn't really say anything. But
this is what you call shouting democracy.
Yeah. It's democracy never, in all its, many forms.
Was this a clap-operative method of doing things?
But this comes to the heart of it, doesn't it? There are people who adore you, Mr. Corbyn, who think you could win in a general election. There are people who respect you who don't think you could win a general election. Because you can't draw in the tens of millions who vote in a general election. Those people who've never been to a Labour Party rally.
In the last election, only half of young people registered to vote turned out to vote, and that was of those that registered. I think we can appeal to a younger generation of the advantages of a Labour government that would support them in education, would support them in housing, would support them in training and apprenticeships. I think we can also appeal to an older generation who are worried about the future of the National Health Service and worried about the future of this country when we have a government that is progressively deindustrialising, reducing the strength of our economy.
Well, they've guaranteed pensions, haven't they? The triple lock on pensions. Is that something that you would back?
I would want to obviously keep that, but I would also want to deal with the issue of the women who are being shortchanged by the increase in retirement age
I want to come back to
ensure that they are given proper transitional payments, otherwise known as the WASPy women.
Yeah. I mean, I've looked at the 50 polls that have been done from the beginning of this year, 50 of them phone polls, internet polls. In 45 of them, the Conservatives are ahead of you, sometimes by as much as 14 points.
Listen,
you're twice as unpopular as Michael Foot 10 months into his...
When this leadership contest is over, this party's got to get together. This party has got to take it to the Tories on housing, on education, on health, on all those issues, and we can do that.
Because I think that is at the heart of this, because I think most people can see there isn't a huge difference between me and Jeremy on all sorts of policies.
I mean, there really isn't, Owen Smith. There really isn't, is there?
You know, I agree with Jeremy. We should be spending more money on the NHS. We should be building housing. We should be making sure
we disagree on Trident.
We disagree on Trident. We disagree on Europe. I believe we still should be fighting to stay within the European Union. I actually think that's one of the most important things we face. But I think Jeremy can't escape the reality that we are at 26 and 28% in the polls. It's the lowest we've been since 1982. And at this trajectory, we'll be at 22% in the polls at the next election. And that would decimate the Labour Party. And without winning an election, then all of the things he and I want to do to improve this country will be for naught, because we cannot put it into practice. And I don't think Jeremy can.
Don't you think all those resignations had some effect on this?
No.
Including your own.
Well, as you know, I came to see you to try and sort this out, and you didn't offer any
solution.
solution.
You came to see me and then said you'd come to support me, and then offered me a job that didn't exist that I would be unopposed election to, and then went out and resigned.
I don't think it's time for comedy,
it was
Jeremy.
kind of
I think
strange.
it's really serious.
No, it's not. No, it's serious.
I think it's really serious.
Let's hear what they're saying.
Because the truth is, we are an incredible low ebb in the Labour Party right now. And my community, Jeremy's community, we can't afford to sit through, as I sat through in my youth, 18 years of the Tories. And there is a very real
how much do you accept responsibility? How much do you accept responsibility for the low ebb that the Labour Party is in right now?
I think we've been incredibly weak as an opposition in the last 11 months.
How much do you,
I'm telling you, I think all of us in the Labour Party need to accept
I'm asking about you personally.
Me personally? Well, let me be clear. Jeremy talks about defending against the WASPy camp. Well, I'm going to answer the question. 3 things that Jeremy likes to talk about. The PIP victory over the Tories on disabled benefits. I won that for the Labour Party.
No, we won it.
Well, it was my party. You didn't even mention it in Parliament.
We won it, Owen. We did it together. It's a we, actually.
Jeremy, I had one meeting with you in 9 months about those issues. One meeting in 9 months. So, if you were helping me, it wasn't terribly obvious to me. But tax credits, PIP, getting rid of Ian Duncan Smith, I'm very proud of those
How much are you
things.
personally responsible for the crisis that the Labour Party finds itself in now? On a scale of 0 to 100% being very, very, very responsible, 0, not responsible at all.
Let's say 3. We were behind in 85% of the polls. Can I finish? We were behind in 85% of the polls.
And the same question to you.
Before the resignation.
How much do you believe you are responsible for the crisis in the Labour Party right now? On that same scale. Owen Smith says he's 3% responsible. What about you?
I've done my best to... Look, I'm not going to start putting figures on it. What I'm saying is I've done my best to... reach out to members of the PLP, to reach out, to bring people together. Owen is quite right. We did defeat the government on PIP, on working tax credits, on forced academisation. I say we because every Labour MP voted together on that, every Labour peer voted together on that, and Labour members voted together on that. Could I reach out? Could I reach out more? I will do my best to reach out as far as I can. But it is a two-way reciprocal process.
Smith supporters are asking you to answer the question. You may not like it. Please, could you answer it?
No, I don't think it's possible to put graded figures on this. Can we discuss the policies instead?
We're going to talk about policies, do not worry, in the next hour of the programme. I'll give you one more opportunity to answer that.
No, I will reach out to people as I've reached out in the past. I want to see this party united, and I want the party members' views to be represented.
Do you think you've done a lot of reaching out?
Yes, I do.
Do you think it works?
It can work on certain occasions. It can work
Give me an
very
example.
well on
Give me
other
an
occasions.
example.
Sorry?
Give me an example of when you've reached out to somebody who disagrees with you and it's worked. You become united.
I've worked very well with Andy Burnham since he became a Shadow Home Secretary in the end of last year. I was very happy to work with Owen on the issues that he was responsible for. I'm very happy to work with John McDonnell on the issues he's responsible for on the economy. And so, yes, it is a broad church. Of course it is. The Labour Party has always been a broad church.
Before we bring you the latest news and sport at 10 o'clock. Hello, yes.
Hi, my name's Deb. I'm from Loughborough. I'm a Unison steward and I work for Children in Care. I've been a member of the Labour Party for 35 years, and my dad was a member of the Labour Party. He's a member of the Labour Party, my mum is. And I'm passionate about the Labour Party. I love it. I love what it stands for. I love the legacy of things that we've created, the welfare state, comprehensive schooling, the NHS. We should be immensely proud of that. And it breaks my heart to see what the party's current situation is. We've just spent half of this programme arguing amongst ourselves about what the party should be doing. And we've got this devastating Tory government that is affecting and crippling the lives of the people that we should be representing. I would kind of be interested, the question you asked us, do we think Jeremy can be a Labour Party Prime Minister, is whether Jeremy believes that he could genuinely win an election. We saw a video earlier of the last election and the announcement that the Tories had won, and every time I see that, it breaks my heart. It makes me feel gutted. I don't want to see that again. We can't afford that as a country, and the people that are hit by austerity cannot afford that to happen again.
Over here.
Morning. Good morning. I'm Sarah Lee Barnett and I work for the Royal College of Nursing. The state of the Labour Party, it's in the very name, party. If you have a leader, it's the responsibility of the rest of the party to get behind that leader. This is not the time to break apart. The Labour Party missed a classic opportunity as the Tory party were in disarray over Brexit, and you collectively missed it. The rest of the Labour Party should have got behind their leader. This debate should have been way down the line.
Hi, my name's Adrian. I'm a Labour supporter, proud to be a Labour supporter, but I'm getting really disappointed, disillusioned with all the infighting. I feel like it's damaging the Labour brand and it's making us unelectable. We need to get our act together, we need to be united, and yeah.
Are you hopeful that will happen at some point?
I really hope, because...
If so, when? What will it take?
It has to happen after the leadership, or...
Whoever wins.
Whoever wins, because if it doesn't, then we're in big trouble.
Thank you. Hello.
Hello, my name's Rachel. I rejoined the Labour Party when Ed Miliband became leader, because I really hoped that we'd move back to our core values that the Labour Party was set up for, which was to defend working people's rights. And I was very disappointed in Ed Miliband. So I was very pleased when Jeremy got elected last year, and this situation now is very depressing. I'm very depressed by it. I just find it so divisive, and I'm getting abuse, and people that support Corbyn are getting abuse. Be called Mao-mentum. They're putting pictures of Stalin and Chairman Mao on the backdrop. They're tweeting it, so it is on both sides. I find it very hostile. The chair of my local branch is doing that, retweeting it. So when I go back in September to my local branch meeting, it's going to be a very awkward situation, because I feel there is a huge division now, and I don't feel respect is being made by the Owen Smith supporters, and I feel like the debate is getting more and more depressing and puerile.
What's the solution, in your view?
We've got to talk about the issues. We've got to talk about why people didn't vote for Labour in the last two elections. Why are people so keen to vote for UKIP? I believe it's because we've abandoned our traditional values. The people that would have voted for this in the past feel abandoned by the champagne politics of Blair. Now, I left the Labour Party under Blair, and I was very depressed, and I would not rejoin it. And so when Ed Miliband rejoined, I thought, great, we're finally going back there. And now I'm so depressed, because whatever happens, I think the MPs have created a very divisive atmosphere.
Thank you. If you're not on mic, we can't hear you, but we've got another hour of conversation to come, and we're going to be joined by listeners to 5 Live in the next hour as well. Wednesday morning, I'm Victoria Derbyshire. Welcome to our passionate programme today. We are live in Nottingham. We've been hearing from the two men who want to run the Labour Party, the incumbent Jeremy Corbyn and the challenger Owen Smith.
Get ready for government, and at the moment I think that means we need to change the leader of the Labour Party. It means we need to be a bit more credible, speaking more broadly across the country, still radical, still sticking to our roots and our beliefs, but perhaps speaking a bit more directly to the country.
If elected again, I will try and reach out to all members of the PLP and invite them to get on board, because there are an awful lot of issues that we can agree on and we can take the fight to the Tories, and that really is what Labour supporters, Labour members and millions of other voters want us to do.
Our audience here of 120 Labour supporters, Labour members, people who would consider voting Labour in the future, have told us they're concerned that the nature of the debate has become really unpleasant.
Rather, I would feel more comfortable going to a Conservative conference saying I'm a Labour supporter than going to the Labour Party conference saying I'm an Owen Smith supporter.
Wow. Seriously. The two contenders have clashed about the levels and direction of abuse within the party.
Some people seem to feel that you're the only socialist in the Labour Party. Some people seem to feel that you're the only guardian of our values because you voted against the last Labour government a lot. And the truth is, I'm not a red Tory, I'm not a Blairite, I'm a socialist, same as you, but I am being castigated on the media. Well, again, they laugh, but I'm just telling the truth. I've never considered myself a Blairite. I've always considered myself a socialist.
Can't we agree that we want this party to be one that's inclusive, that's open, that's welcoming, that doesn't tolerate any kind of foul language, racism in any form whatsoever?
Good morning. Good morning, I'm Victoria Derbyshire. We are live in Nottingham today. We have been debating with the two men who want to run the Labour Party, in Jeremy Corbyn's case, want to continue running the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn and Owen Smith, here with an audience of around 100, 120 Labour supporters, Labour members, people who would consider voting Labour in the future. A lot of the conversation in the last half hour, particularly, has been about Labour members who are so upset about the state of their party. Labour members who've recently joined who believe they've entered a toxic environment and they don't like that feeling. There's been some emotion, there's been a lot of passion. In the next hour of the programme, we really want to talk about the kind of promises both Owen Smith and Jeremy Corbyn are making to their supporters in order to get elected as leader. Can we also say hello and good morning to listeners from BBC Radio 5 Live who join us right now? So, as I said, in the last half hour, we've heard lots of conversation. We're going to ask both men to set out some of their policies in a second. And we've already talked about Labour and a potential problem with nastiness and general abuse to anyone who might disagree with the leadership. But first, our audience here in Nottingham, as I said, either Labour members, voters, people who say they might vote Labour at a general election. They've been split up into groups. Over here, people who support Jeremy Corbyn. Over here, people who support Owen Smith. And over here, people who haven't yet made up their mind and may actually, in the end, choose neither of the two men here today. What about those parts of the electorate the two will certainly need to attract if they're going to stand any chance of winning power at a general election? Our reporter Leslie Ashmore has been to see what most voters have to say.
This is Croydon Central. It's currently held by a Conservative by just 165 votes. So the Labour Party knows it needs to win here if it's going to win the general election. It's third on their target list. But what does the target audience make of these two? Do you know who this gentleman is?
MP, is he?
He is an MP. Do you know his name?
No.
Do you know who this gentleman is?
Yeah.
Who's this?
He's the Labour leader at the moment.
I'm not too sure who that is, but he doesn't like Corbyn, does he? Not voting for him.
Why
It's got to
not?
be Jeremy. Who is he? What's he done? He hasn't got any history of supporting Labour causes. Jeremy's been supporting causes from the 70s. That's the man.
Bloody old. What do you think of this man? You're not happy with him?
I wouldn't have him in my dustbin.
Oh, get out of here.
I wouldn't have him in my empty my dustbin.
What's wrong with this man?
Hey?
What's wrong?
He's a Trotsky.
This guy here is
He's a total Trotsky.
and he's a plant by big business.
He's a
wrong un and he's a wrong un. They're both wrong un.
Listen, man, it's politics. It's the politics of the past. Yeah, we should step down.
Why do you think this man is a good Labour leader?
He stands by what he's said for quite a long time. Yeah, he hasn't changed his views in terms of social mobility, youth unemployment, housing, wars, unnecessary wars, all those sort of. So he's been very consistent.
I hope he gets it voted, because then Labour won't be in for 100 years.
You think he is the Conservatives' best chance?
Oh, I think well, either of them, but I think I really hope he gets voted in. I really do.
So the Conservatives win?
Yeah, it's suicide.
There we go. So not that many recognised you, Owen Smith. Here's an opportunity for our audience across the country to get to know both of you a little bit better before we come on to policies. Gentlemen, short and concise answers, please. I'll repeat that again. Short and concise answers, please. Start with you, Owen Smith. What's worse, being described as a Tory or a smarmy post-Tribunite non-entity swathed in unrealistic ambition? That, by the way, from the former boss of the radio programme you used to work for.
Definitely being described as a Tory.
OK. Who's your favourite Conservative politician?
Don't have any.
Are you a feminist?
Yes.
When was the last time you got angry and why?
About 20 minutes ago.
Why?
Because we're debating the future of the Labour Party, a party I love and one that is at an incredible low ebb right now, and because people in this country can't afford there not to be a Labour government.
What's the average price of a litre of unleaded petrol?
Oh, £1, no, I can't remember. £1.10 at the moment?
Not far out, yeah, not far out. Right, I've got some photos here. Where are they? Here. Hang on.
This is pop quiz time.
It is. OK. So, for listeners on 5 Live, I'll tell you who this is on the photo in a second, but can you name, Owen Smith, who is in this photo?
Taylor Swift. And is that Justin Bieber?
Well done. He's absolutely right. Okay.
I'm very good at singing along to Shake It at karaoke.
How many Olympic gold medals has Jason Kenny achieved over his entire cycling career?
Oh, loads. 7? 8? Don't know.
6.
Oh, well, there we go. I was close.
What was the Wales-Belgium score in the quarterfinals of Euro 2016?
That was definitely 3-0.
No!
Oh, was that the Russian game we beat 3-0? Yeah. I was in the pub and I'd had a few, I don't remember.
OK.
I know we won, and I did celebrate with gusto.
Belgium scored 1 goal. What's Jeremy
3-1,
Corbyn's
was it?
best quality?
He's got a very nice line in cream suits.
Is that it?
No, look, Jeremy is a man of great integrity and honesty, and I think he fundamentally believes in the Labour Party. I just don't think he's a leader.
What's the worst thing about Jeremy Corbyn?
I don't think he's a leader, and he's in the position of leading the Labour Party, and at the moment he's leading us to loss. Would you serve in his shadow cabinet if he wins and invites you into it? I've been thinking hard about this, and I think because I am someone with integrity and I have lost faith in Jeremy's ability to lead us to victory, I've got to say no. I would serve on the backbenches. I wouldn't do what Jeremy did and vote against Labour hundreds of times. I'll always be Labour. Hundreds of times he voted against us, and it wasn't just on Iraq. It was 455 times on all sorts of issues, but I will always be Labour.
All right, Jeremy Corbyn, what do you prefer? And you have to pick one, Blairism or Trotskyism?
I'd have to say neither.
You have to pick one?
I have to say neither.
Can you name 3 things?
Sorry?
Can you name 3 things that you admire about Tony Blair?
The fact that he took through the whole Northern Ireland peace process with great determination, he did that extremely well. The fact that he supported the national minimum wage, and the fact that his government, when I was in Parliament at the time, obviously brought in both the Human Rights Act and paved the way for the Labour Equalities Act.
Would you, let's crack on with these, would you call yourself a feminist?
Yes.
When was the last time you cried, and what was it about?
Can't remember, so I don't know what it was about.
Do you cry often or
No.
irregularly?
No, we don't do a lot of crying.
Okay. How much does a first-class stamp cost?
50p.
Up a bit? Higher?
65.
Lower?
60.
64. Okay, for listeners on 5 Live, I'm holding up a picture of 2 young men. Actually, I think they've just reached 40, but anyway, Jeremy Corbyn, do you know who these 2 men are and which one is which? I'll give you a clue. They're Geordie TV presenters.
Oh, yeah. Well, they're Geordie TV presenters. No, I don't.
You don't?
No.
No idea?
I cannot name them, I'm really sorry.
Oh, that's all right, that's all right. That's Ant and that's Dec.
Yeah, I hope they'll be happy about this.
They are Labour supporters.
I know.
Okay.
They sent an email of support
Did
to
they?
the Labour Party. Yeah.
Maybe they'll want to withdraw that now.
I will apologise humbly to
Oh,
Ant
gosh,
and Dec.
no, they won't expect you to do that.
I do apologies, it's all right.
Goodness me. Right. How many? How many Olympic goals has Sir Bradley Wiggins achieved so far?
15, I think, altogether.
Gold.
Oh, gold. Oh, 10. 10. No.
Lower? You tweeted on Friday it was 8, but then that was deleted.
What do you mean it was deleted? By whom?
Well, you tell me. Do you not do your own tweets?
Has my Twitter account been hacked into it?
Do you do your own tweets?
Oh, let's go for it. Yes, I do. Let's go for 8.
Okay. You tweeted on Friday, congratulations to Bradley for his 8th gold medal. It's not 8 goals, it's...
8 medals, yeah. But it's still a great achievement.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. What's the best thing about Owen Smith?
That he's passionate and direct, and he gets very excited.
What's the worst?
Well, I've seen you get excited. What's wrong with that?
Only when I'm fighting the Tories.
What's the worst thing about Owen Smith?
That he resigned from the shadow cabinet and he should come back.
So if you win, you'll extend an invitation to him to come back to the shadow cabinet, even though he's already said he's not going to do that.
Well, you know.
Yeah.
People change.
And would you serve in his shadow cabinet if he won?
Well, if he invites me, of course, but I'm not sure the invitation is there. But I wouldn't ask him that question if I was.
No, well, let me ask him.
He might want to think about that.
Jeremy,
no, you want to think about that. It's all right.
Jeremy,
understand.
Jeremy asked me that last week, and I said to him last week, as I've said on 2 occasions on television, yes, I would want Jeremy in the shadow cabinet.
Okay. But you definitely don't want to be president.
No, because the position doesn't exist.
No, but if he wins, he could create it like that.
Well, no, he couldn't create it. A leader can propose, the party can decide, and there is no position.
All right.
Although I did talk to Jeremy about being president or chairman of the party, and we do have a chairman, and we could elevate that role as we've had in the past.
Actually, you asked me to be Harold Lasky.
Yeah, he was chairman.
He was indeed. He was chairman of the NEC.
Okay, quick words to shout out. What do you think about what you've heard about so far from these 2 gentlemen this morning? Quick thoughts before we talk about policies. Quick thoughts. Microphone.
I just wondered, Jeremy keeps saying that Owen...
Quick thoughts.
Sorry, my name's Liam. I've come from Yorkshire today to be on the show.
Hi, Liam.
I just wanted to say, Jeremy's mentioned Owen may not ask him to be part of the shadow cabinet. I just wondered what the rationale was behind that suggestion.
Well, he's asked me, so the question is answered.
I suppose so, sorry.
Okay. Yep, quick thoughts so far. Nadia, hello.
I think that as a Labour Party, when we talk about things like human rights of all communities and policies which unite us is absolutely fantastic. And we should do that more, and we should do that more in the media as well, as instead of just being seen as bickering all the time, which clearly you guys here today are not.
Okay, hello. Quick thoughts. so far before we talk about policies?
My quick thoughts are is that trust and confidence need to be maintained across, and there needs to be this unity. And I feel that on the first hurdle, by resigning, by going against Mr Corbyn with the other PLP members, that trust and confidence has been severely damaged. So how can we ever get behind somebody else when they've backstabbed somebody in the process? And I feel that and this kind of celebrity culture, we want somebody who's actually honest and that sticks to his principles. And when I first heard about Mr Corbyn, when I joined the Labour Party last year, I looked at his record and thought, right, this guy is stuck with his message the whole time, no community left behind, lifting up those who are weaker, and really looking to kind of build this country into a great nation.
Okay.
Whereas if I look at yourself, I just see a lot of public relations and
You're talking to Owen Smith now.
Celebrity culture.
Public relations and celebrity culture, Owen Smith.
Yes, just like the cards. Like, do you recognise this person? Recognise? I want something.
He's not a bad man because he recognised Taylor Swift and Justin Bieber.
I recognise that he is, he's probably a very decent man, but my point.
A backstabber.
My point is, yeah, exactly. But by the act of resigning, what other conclusion am I to come up with when I see somebody resigning from somebody who's actually been elected by the members of the Labour Party? And I'm a new member, and I feel criminalised by this process. And we are very much in favour of Mr Corbyn, simply because of the basic principle that we do not run away.
Thank you. Answer the point about being a backstabber, Owen Smith.
I feel that I'm elected by my
Tell
constituents.
him, not me.
Well, I can tell both of you, can't I? I feel that I'm elected by my constituents in Pontypridd, and I feel that I would be letting my constituents down if I didn't speak out at a point at which I felt the Labour Party was being led towards irrelevance. I think we've lost a huge degree of credibility in this country. I don't think people are looking to the Labour Party right now as an alternative government. The evidence of that is the fact that we've been behind in 100-odd polls. Jeremy isn't the only person who wants to make Britain great or have a more equal society or deliver our values in power, in practice. We all want that in the Labour Party, but to do it, we've got to be in power. And the principal reason I have resigned from the Shadow Cabinet is I don't believe Jeremy can win power for it. It's not about trading our principles, it's about putting them into power. Otherwise, I'm just wasting my time as an MP, and I don't want to waste my time.
Okay, hang on a minute. No, sorry, sir, we are going to talk about policies now. Come on, it's 10:20. So we've talked about the current state of the Labour Party. What do the two men stand for? Let's have a look. The reason Jeremy Corbyn said he ran in his first Labour leadership contest last year was to increase the choice party members had in who should represent them. This time round, however, those voting only have a choice of two, and their policies are pretty similar. In many areas, it's hard to spot the difference. Owen Smith wants to abolish zero-hours contracts. Jeremy Corbyn does too. Jeremy Corbyn wants to scrap the government's Trade Union Act, and so does Owen Smith. When it comes to the railways, both want to renationalise. On healthcare, both want to see a 100% publicly owned NHS that's free at the point of use. And for the north of England, both want to see major investment. Even when they don't share the same pledges, they often have the same principles. And it's difficult to see at first glance what separates them. Jeremy Corbyn says he'll guarantee 1 million new homes within 4 years. Owen Smith has pledged to build 1.5 million within 5 years. Mr Smith says he'll ensure a £200 billion investment in the UK economy, focusing on the jobs of the future. Jeremy Corbyn has proposed injecting £500 billion to invest in, amongst other things, new industries. And to pay towards it, Jeremy Corbyn wants to reinstate the 50p top rate of tax and plans a 1% increase in corporation tax. Owen Smith also wants to see the 50p top rate reintroduced and has proposed a further wealth tax on the top 1% of earners. Both also want to protect the welfare state. Owen Smith says he would scrap the Department of Work and Pensions and replace it. Jeremy Corbyn says he would scrap the household benefit cap, which limits claimants' maximum welfare payments. On green energy, Jeremy Corbyn wants to ensure the UK meets the goals outlined in the Climate Change Act, while Owen Smith wants to invest in renewable energy. And on foreign policy, Owen Smith says he was against the Iraq war, although, as he wasn't an MP, he wasn't able to vote. Jeremy Corbyn has always been vehemently opposed. Both voted against airstrikes on Islamic State in Syria. In some policy areas, however, the difference is plain to see. Mr Corbyn's vehemently opposed to the renewal of Britain's nuclear weapons system, Trident. Mr Smith is in favour. Jeremy Corbyn's pledge to abolish university tuition fees. Owen Smith hasn't set out a policy, though he has previously voted against the fee cap of £9,000 per year. And while Owen Smith believes there should be another referendum to approve the government's terms for exiting the EU, Jeremy Corbyn's against this. But with the bookies making Jeremy Corbyn their overwhelming favourite, it remains to be seen whether these differences are enough for Owen Smith to cause a shock. By the way, all but one council area here in Nottinghamshire, where we are this morning, including the city centre, voted to leave the European Union. This from an area where 7 out of 11 of its MPs are Labour, exactly the kind of area that the new Labour leader, whoever wins, needs to win over and convince he's electable. Both of you want to spend more on new housing. Both of you want to renationalise the railways. Both of you want to spend on infrastructure projects. Both of you want to increase some taxes. Your tax increases, though, won't pay for your spending plans.
The tax increases would obviously help, but it's also a question of investment in the economy, hence the National Investment Bank, which would help to grow the economy. And if we improve public transport links, we improve all transport links, and particularly improve access to bus transport for everybody, that becomes a helpful economic generator.
How much do you need to grow the economy by to pay for all the things you want to do?
We need a growth rate that would obviously continue to increase government income in order to pay for it. It's very hard to predict what the growth rate would be. At the moment, it's very low. We're looking at 1–2% at the very most that we can achieve in the near future.
So you won't have the money to pay for all the things you want to do?
No, you'd have to.
How do you make up the short?
Some of it would be done by borrowing for investment through the National Investment Bank. Some of it would be leaving money in. But it is much more efficient to borrow through a National Investment Bank, government-backed, rather than forcing the debts onto local authorities, hospitals and schools through things like the Private Finance Initiative or borrowing at a more local level, which is much more expensive. We have to invest to grow the economy.
Yeah. What's your plan then? If it's growing the economy that would pay for the things you want to spend money on, what's your plan for reducing the 70 billion deficit?
The growth of the economy and the growth of tax income would, of course, help to achieve that.
So not if you're spending it on infrastructure projects,
infrastructure projects,
grants, universal childcare.
Infrastructure projects generate growth. Childcare generates growth. Good education generates growth. The public sector investment is a win all round in the sense that it develops the economy.
It's going to be a lot of economic growth you're going to need in order to pay for all that.
Yes,
and you acknowledge it's low at the moment, although it's the fastest in the G7.
It is low at the moment. It is one of the faster in the G7. It could go a lot faster. We have the lowest level of investment of any G7 country, and we're pretty low on the overall level. We have to invest a lot more in order to achieve the economic success we need.
Again, Owen Smith, your sums don't add up either. How are you going to pay for what you're promising your supporters?
Well, with respect, I think you're wrong. My sums do add up. I've said explicitly that I would raise £13.5 billion worth of extra taxes through changing the 50p rate, introducing a wealth tax, not cutting inheritance tax, not cutting capital gains tax, putting corporation tax back up to 20%, and changing the pension tax relief that is ripping off working people and making sure that working people get a better deal out of that. All of those things would raise money, and all of those things would allow me to pay for getting rid of the public sector pay freeze, introducing 4% per annum, an extra £60 billion by the end of the Parliament on the NHS. All of the infrastructure spend I've talked about would come through raising £200 billion in borrowing. That would be through issuing what are called long-dated government gilts, 40 billion a year for 5 years. Not a single economist in Britain disagrees with me about that.
But
and it would allow us to invest.
With both of you, if you're doing all that borrowing, if you don't get the massive growth that you hope for, which we haven't had for a few years, let's be honest, you're acknowledging you're going to be borrowing more, the deficit's going to go up.
Yes,
Right.
Because the thing that should be crucial right now is growing the economy and investing. It's not a question whether we can afford it, Victoria. Can we afford to leave our children with crumbling hospitals, with class
Well, you're passing on the debt levels to them.
And at the moment, we're passing on failing infrastructure and an inability for children to go to university or higher education, an inability for our hospitals to deal with the problems for the older generation. It's crucial that we invest. We can't afford not to.
Look at the issue of housing, for example. At the moment, we spend a great deal of money on housing benefit, which pays for very high rents in the private rented sector. If instead we diverted that money into bricks and mortar, building lifetime tenancy council houses, investing in housing, you create good jobs in construction in the supply chain. You also give people a quality of life they don't get at the moment. And crucially, you give children a security of knowing their home is their own, rather than the threat of being moved every 6 months in the private rented sector.
Okay. Comments, questions from our audience? Hello, sir. Do introduce yourself.
Stuart Moore, Brigham Gould, CLP. My question is for Owen.
You're a Mr Corbyn supporter.
I'm a Jeremy Corbyn supporter, a passionate Jeremy Corbyn supporter.
Are there any other?
I left the Labour Party when Tony Blair won his leadership, and I rejoined the day Jeremy won.
Okay.
So that says about how I think about
Well, what
the
did you
Labour
think?
Party and its values.
Just a quick one. Sorry. Under Tony Blair, 3 general election wins. What were you thinking on the night Labour was
I
declared
believe
the
in
victor?
the traditional values of the Labour Party.
So when they
going back
won
to
on those 3
1945,
times, what were you thinking? I wish they hadn't. Or
in all honesty, he did make a few good things happen, like Jeremy's just said. But he could have done a lot more.
All right, let's not talk about the past. What's your point on policy, sir?
Policy, I'm passionate about the Trident issue, and I'm curious to know if Owen's in favour of the Trident project at a cost of 200 billion or even more. Would he be prepared to press that button and possibly kill millions of people? And if so, where does that lie within the morality of the Labour Party and our movement?
Can I first say, I believe we shouldn't, be lambasting the record of the last Labour government. We raised 1 million children out of poverty. We introduced a national minimum wage. We trebled funding on the NHS. That's right. We made sure that we were raising wages in this country. It was a period of economic growth. Cities like Nottingham were transformed under the last Labour government. So we shouldn't be dissing it. It wasn't Labour spending on schools or hospitals that led to the bankers' crash. And if I can turn now to Trident.
Yes.
Look, I am a multilateralist. I fundamentally want to rid the entire world of nuclear weapons. And Jeremy and I and yourself said we've got a disagreement of how best we do that. Jeremy's view, your view, is obviously that we should unilaterally get rid of our weapons, offer a lead to the world, if you like, and then hope that everybody else follows suit. My view is that's naive. I used to hold that view. I don't any longer. I believe we should negotiate away our nuclear weapons in order to get rid of everybody's nuclear weapons. I don't think the Americans and the Russians will just get rid of theirs because we get rid of ours. And if we have a nuclear weapon, if we have a deterrent, then of course the leader of the Labour Party and the man who wants to be Prime Minister has to be prepared to say that he would be prepared to deploy the nuclear deterrent. Because if you don't, then you don't have a nuclear deterrent.
Okay.
And this does speak to the issue of credibility, because the country wants the Labour Party to be serious about the security of our country. And I see the world as a much more dangerous place than it's been for many, many years. And I think they want a Labour Party that is going to maintain the security of our country, including through maintaining a nuclear deterrent.
Mr Corbyn, famously, you said you wouldn't press the button, even though we know there is no actual button, but everybody knows what that means. You said you would keep the submarines, but there would be no weapons system
They would be non-nuclear armed, that's the point.
Right.
There would non-nuclear weapons. Listen, security is obviously crucial. The issues around the world are clearly very crucial. The use of nuclear weapons is unconscionable by anybody, I would have thought. One nuclear explosion anywhere in the world would set off a chain reaction of environmental, human and economic disaster around the whole globe.
And
it was a Labour government in the 1960s that negotiated the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. We agreed then, Article 6, we would take steps towards disarmament, as would the other 4 declared nuclear weapon states. I want to be the leader of a Labour government that will take those steps towards disarmament and fulfil those obligations. We can do that. Listen, security in the world can be dealt with by respect for human rights, by support for democracy, by a process that tries to bring about a political settlement to the many crises that are faced around the world. I do not see where nuclear weapons are providing any sense of security that would deal with the issues in Syria, in Libya, or indeed were any protection of the USA on the disastrous day of 9/11 in 2001.
You'll understand why I'm asking this question. So therefore, in Syria, would you sit down with President Assad? Would you sit down with members of so-called Islamic State?
There has to be a political process. There already is a political process being conducted through the Geneva talks. That does involve, yes, negotiations that involve the Assad regime. That's obvious. It also, I suspect, brings in some kind of proximity talks or whatever. Owen and I both voted against the bombing of Syria because what we couldn't see was any credible use of it or value to it, because what was then going to happen was there's a plethora of people that were opposed to Assad, including the Al-Nusra Brigade, who were very close to Al-Qaeda. So I think that we have to support a serious political process, and that serious political process has got to be redoubled. I think a lot of time was lost. So would this
process, just to be clear from both of you, would this process involve anyone from so-called Islamic State, yes or no?
No, they're not going to be around the table, no.
Well, my record is I was someone who worked on the peace process in Northern Ireland for 3 years. I was part of the UK's negotiating team that helped bring together the loyalist paramilitaries and the DUP in particular into the process alongside
with so-called Islamic State?
And my view is that ultimately all solutions to these sorts of crises, these sorts of international crises, do come about through dialogue. So eventually, if we are to try and solve this, all of the actors do need to be involved. But at the moment, ISIL are clearly not interested in negotiating.
All right. So you're a no and you're a yes, that's clear. Thank you. No, it's...
I'm yes at some point. At some point, for us to resolve this, we will need to get people around the table.
OK, over here. Hello. Oh, sorry, hi.
Good morning. I'm going to ask a very practical question. All morning, we've had differences, etc., and we've said, here's a difference here, here's a difference here, but we haven't gone on to how we will reconcile those changes. And I think the Trident question is probably the one issue on which there is the greatest, I don't want to call it a chasm, but we have to come up with a practical solution. How will you, Mr. Jeremy Corbyn, who, because you're likely to win the leadership election... No, we know that, let's be practical, but there is an issue here. How will you reconcile the fact that there are 172 Labour MPs who do not have a hold of that position? How will you reconcile the position that the general Labour Party's official position is that we're a multilateralist, and that the general country as a whole believes in the nuclear deterrent, and on that one single issue we may well lose all the other good things that the Labour Party can potentially achieve in this country?
All right, just to let Listen to 5 Live know. That was an Owen Smith supporter saying that Jeremy Corbyn was likely to win this. Do answer the question.
Oh, thank you for pointing that out.
It's a leadership question.
Well, no,
it's a leadership question.
Thanks for the question. We are undertaking a review of defence policy at the moment. Clive Lewis, the Shadow Defence Secretary, has it in his hands to present a report which will come together on issues of future defence strategy in all aspects, not just the nuclear aspect. My view is that we should, as I've said, fulfil our obligations under the Non-Proliferation Treaty. There has been a welcome reduction in warheads by both Russia and the USA, and indeed by France and China. That has to be a step forward. We are one of only 5 declared nuclear weapon states. There are only 3 other states in the world that are known to have nuclear weapons. 187 countries don't have them, don't want them, and want to live in a nuclear-free world. Surely, and I've been at NPT conferences, Non-Proliferation Treaty conferences, as part of this whole discussion, there is a huge movement around the world which says security comes about when you deal with inequality, with injustice, you deal with the insecurity, the refugee crisis, and all the other things. What part do nuclear weapons play in any of that?
But we will lose the general...
I'm going to sweep round, if I may. 10:37. Good morning. We have a Labour leadership programme this morning, as you may have gathered, featuring Owen Smith and the incumbent Jeremy Corbyn. Couple of messages before we hear more questions from our audience on policy. This email from Paul: Are Corbyn and Smith the best the Labour Party can do? Neither has the strength of personality or creditable policies to govern this country. The Conservatives must be jumping with joy. This email from Penny: Why does Jeremy Corbyn expect his MPs to back his leadership when he has spent quite a lot of time of his parliamentary career voting against the party whip? Quick response: why it's all right for you to rebel against the party whip but criticise others for
I
campaigning
voted
against
on
you?
Iraq, I voted on anti-terrorism legislation, on student fees and PFI contracts and some other issues. I fulfilled my role as a backbencher doing that. I did not indulge in abuse of anybody. I put forward a credible political view that I believed to be one that was in tune with a lot of opinion of Labour members and of Labour supporters. I recognise there is dissent within any party. Any big party is, in a sense, a coalition. But you come together on the fundamental issues that we're talking about how we chase down austerity, housing, health and all the other issues that we've talked about this morning.
And this tweet from Neil. I admire anyone who doesn't know Anton Deck. Question here. Hello.
Anyone
Introduce yourself.
My name is Sanjay Gogia. I'm a notary public appointed by the Archbishop of Canterbury and a passionate Labour supporter. For Brexit, David Cameron and yourself, you tried to convince the country that we should remain in Europe. The man had the decency. He stood down. You didn't. Do you take responsibility that we lost by 2% and you are responsible for that?
4%.
No. The Remain vote was 48.1, and only if we had 2% more, we would have won.
Okay.
Obviously, if there had been more people voting to Remain, we'd have won the referendum, and I wish we had won the referendum. Two-thirds... Oh, hang on. Two-thirds of all Labour supporters voted to Remain. Less than one-third of Conservative supporters voted to Remain. There's also a message there in the referendum that the results were very different in different parts of the country.
And so
my constituency voted 70% to Remain. Owen's voted against remaining. So...
It was 50-50.
Okay.
50-50.
So, do you take responsibility that you were responsible?
I did my best in that campaign.
No, you didn't.
Oh, hang on, how do you know?
I didn't see you enough.
I did not see you on TV once properly.
It was only Cameron.
It is not...
I'm sorry, Mr. Corbyn. The point is that I followed the arguments for and against passionately. David Cameron, I am a member of the Labour Party. Good. I would be seen dead voting for Tories. But David Cameron came across far more passionately than you ever did.
The points I was putting in the referendum campaign are: leave Europe, you lose environmental protection rights, you lose workers' rights, you lose consumer rights. You end up with the danger of losing market access for British manufacturing industry in Europe. I pointed all that out. I also pointed out there had to be changes in the European Union, like the rules on state aid, like the attempt to enforce privatisation of postal services and rail services, and the European Union had to be more responsive to the views of democratic opinion all across Europe.
You did say those things. You definitely said those words. It's just that sometimes you didn't sound like you meant it. That's the accusation. Over here, hello.
Hello. My name's John Sanderson. I'm a member of the Regional Committee of the Musicians' Union, the Midlands region. I've got 1 or 2 points to say.
Can I ask you to make one, sir, just so we can get more people in the last quarter of an hour of the programme, please? What's your main...
I'll try and be as short as I can.
Oh, OK.
Right, I want to talk about the situation with the MPs, because I believe that every member of the Labour Party has a right to an equal say in who the leader will be and what the policies will be, irrespective of whether they're MPs or not. And I want to emphasise the point 1 million people went out onto the streets, some said 2 million, at the start of the Iraq War. Those people were right.
Okay.
All those Labour MPs who voted for the Iraq War were wrong. Doesn't that say something? Doesn't that mean that ordinary members of the Labour Party need to be part of the decision-making process, not
John, I'm gonna pause there.
just fodder for elections.
Thank you very much, John. I think some people want to go back to Brexit. Hello. Hi.
My name's Umar Kazmi. I'm a 19-year-old Labour member and I'm a supporter of Jeremy Corbyn. I for a long time was a Brexiter. And I eventually voted to remain on the 23rd of June, and that had nothing to do with Alan Johnson and the tone of that Labour for Britain campaign. And I think Jeremy struck the tone correctly, which was that we should stay in and reform. And there's lots of over-enthusiastic Europhiles who don't understand that the working class of this country and many other people, 40% of our Labour voters voted to leave because they felt disconnected with the establishment. And that campaign failed to engage with them. And it was Jeremy's tone, and it was the tone of other people working in the Another Europe is Possible campaign that brought those people in and got me to change my mind.
Owen Smith.
Well, I don't blame Jeremy for us walking out of Europe, but I do think it is a desperate mistake for our country. And I remain passionate about us remaining within the European Union, because all of the things Jeremy and I want to do will be immeasurably harder by our being outside the European Union. You've just got to look at the results yesterday. So the crucial question, however, is now about the future, because now we are walking out of the European Union at some point. I think the question is for Jeremy and for me, what will we do as leader of this party in the event that David Davis and Liam Fox sell down the river our rights in this country, social protections, environmental protections, the NHS? I'm very clear. We should reject that, and we should put it back to the British people in a second referendum or a general election. But would Jeremy, that's the real question.
If they cross, the issue is if the government crosses red lines.
What's the red line for you?
The red lines are environmental protection, consumer protection, workers' rights, market access, right of financial institutions in Britain to trade within Europe. Those things are crucial. The debate is. Hang on, wait a minute. The debate is very fundamental about the future of this country. The Tory party is in a discussion about it, let's put it in a very polite form. Are we to become a sort of bargain basement, low-wage, deeply unequal island off the shores of Europe?
No,
or
that's why we've got a campaign to stay in.
Can I finish, please? Thank you. Instead, we need to have a high investment economy. We need to have all those protections enshrined in UK law following whatever negotiations take place. But crucially, there has to be access to the European market for British manufacturing industry.
Okay, well, I want to ask both of you because neither of you.
Victoria,
hang on a minute. Neither of you have mentioned freedom of movement of people. There were Labour voters in Labour heartlands in the northeast of England in particular who voted to leave because they are anxious about that. And neither of you seem to have anything to say to those Labour voters.
I have a great deal to say to those voters.
Well, do you acknowledge they're really concerned about that?
I acknowledge the concerns, I acknowledge the upset. A referendum produced a result we didn't want. People voted against for lots of reasons. They felt left behind in communities where there had been no investment. They felt high levels of unemployment. They felt, quite correctly, they were getting much lower wages. Lincolnshire, for example.
And they felt disconnected.
Can I finish? £4 an hour under the national average.
You because you are pro increasing levels of net migration, and they're not.
No, what I'm saying is there has to be an investment in those communities, so there's a migrant impact fund, partly funded by the EU and partly by the British government. The Tories, by the way, abolished and closed that fund down, which would help with any problems over education, health and so on, where the funding formula is inadequate. And indeed, it's this government that is destroying the public services in every major city in this country.
All right, listen. We've got about 10, 12 minutes left, so I'm going to ask people to be as concise as possible, if I may. Let me tell you too, after 11, on the BBC News Facebook page, your chance to ask questions about the Labour leadership debate with our political correspondent, Chris Mason, who is getting ready now somewhere across wherever we are at Nottingham Trent University. Just search for BBC News on Facebook. So that's with Chris Mason at 11 o'clock, straight after this programme. Right, more from our audience. Hi.
Hi, I'm Catherine and I'm 13. I'm worried about my future because I want to go to college and I want to go to university, but I'm going to be stuck with so many student fees. And the reason I'm very worried is because my mum got a free education, but because I've got to be in debt when I'm older, it's going to affect me even more and my opportunities I would like to do later on.
OK, tuition fees. Would you scrap them, Owen Smith?
Yes, you said earlier on that I hadn't laid out a policy on this. I have. I've said that I'd scrap them and I'd introduce a graduate tax. I think that's the fairest way I can see for us to deal with this issue right now. We've been warning for a long time that this rise to £9,000 and now the cap being taken off that is going to mean fewer and fewer children from working class backgrounds in this country going to university.
Although that hasn't happened.
Yes, it has. It has. It happened 2 weeks ago, Victoria. For the first time ever, we've seen a reduction from 66 to 62%. So what we've been warning is coming to pass. And as I said earlier on, my eldest is getting his AS results this week. He wants to go to university, but there will be people like us all around the country wondering whether it's worth racking up 30, 40, 50 grand in debt if you're only going to end up with a low-wage, insecure job at the end. But you've got to say how you're going to pay for it. And I'm saying a graduate tax.
Take it back slightly. I think we have to restore the educational maintenance allowance to encourage young people to remain at school. We have to ensure that every young person gets the option of a good quality qualification through an apprenticeship or going to university, so that we have a parity of esteem on the levels of qualification, and we have to get rid of the iniquity of £9,000 a year student fees and the loss of maintenance grant, which means these massive debts. Other countries don't do it.
And
they value and invest in education.
How would you pay for scrapping?
Pay for it through increase in corporate taxation. The graduate tax.
So that's what you'd pay for the EMA
I have
and
concerns
the student
about
grants.
the graduate tax, because it could end up that you're in effect charging people because they've got a qualification. I would rather they are taxed because they're wealthy rather than just because of the qualification they've got. I think you'll probably agree with that.
Your increase, Mr Corbyn, in corporation tax, if I've understood correctly, is going to pay for reintroducing student grants and reintroducing the EMA, the Educational Maintenance Allowance.
Yeah.
So how would you pay for tuition fees if you scrap them?
The tuition fees would also be paid for through increases of taxation at that end. At the moment, what we're doing is asking students to fund universities rather than the public to fund universities. I would rather move into the other way around of public funding of it.
OK, so do you know which tax you'd put up to pay for scrapping tuition fees?
It'll be largely on levels of corporate taxation.
OK. All right.
Can I just say on that, Victoria?
I just want a couple more minutes, so I do want to hear from the audience. Hello.
My name's Fiona. I'm from Kirkby in Ashfield. I've also got a question actually on corporate tax, so that's interesting. The corporations have been able to avoid being clever, do all sorts of things that have been enabled them not to pay the levels of tax. They've been able to pay larger dividends to their shareholders and less corporation tax. However, how will you actually make them pay tax without them going, well, we're leaving, see ya? That's what's important. We need jobs, but we need investment from them. What would both of your policies be?
I would say that we have to do country-by-country reporting of each big corporation, so they can't shift their supposed income from a high-tax environment to a low-tax environment. Therefore, companies that, for example, shift their head office and claim the turnover in Switzerland when in reality it's somewhere else paying a very low level of corporate taxation. Okay. Tax should be paid on the place where you make the money, the place where you sell the goods or services.
All right.
And also chasing down the tax havens that are often in British overseas territories with these convenient badge companies. And I'd simply say this to our media, who constantly put forward this idea that somehow or other it's clever to avoid tax. It isn't. When you avoid tax, that's where you don't get ambulances, don't get a fire service, don't get a hospital.
How would you do this?
I think quite simply we've got to legislate to make sure that companies pay tax on the profits that they earn in this country. I don't think it's any more complicated than that. And at the moment we're heading towards a 17% corporation rate. It's half that of America. It's half that of most of our European neighbours. I don't think it would result in flight of business from this country. I think businesses in this country benefit massively from having an educated workforce through public finance, from having a healthy workforce through our public NHS. And I think most businesses in this country will be very happy to pay a bit more in order to support our country, and we should encourage them to do that.
All right, over here. Hello. Morning.
Hi, I'm Denny. I've been a Labour member for about a year, and I want to ask a question to both of you about the NHS. You both talk about putting a lot of money into the NHS, but I want to ask you where it's going to go. I see the mental health services of this country, particularly for young people like me, have been constantly degraded by this Conservative government. They're getting worse and worse. Young people are having to wait 6 months, a year, for a mental health appointment that could be the difference. And I want to ask, how are you going to make it any better, both of you? If either of you were Prime Minister, how would you sort out the mess that is mental health in this country?
Well, I saw this firsthand just a couple of weeks ago when my brother was admitted to an NHS hospital for a week with an issue around mental health, and I saw what an incredible Cinderella service it is, being bounced back and forth. I'd invest. I think very simply we need to invest an extra 4% per annum in the NHS, an extra 60 billion. We were actually in Wales, and I was going to a brand new mental health hospital at Llandoch in Cardiff, built by the Welsh Labour government, because we are still investing in our NHS in Wales. So the evidence is there. We can invest in mental health. My grandmother is in an NHS hospital even as we speak. We all know it's vital. We just need to invest, and we need to say where the money's coming from in order to do that.
We do face a mental health crisis in this country. 1 in 4 of us are going to face a crisis during our own lifetime. We can do two things. One is change our language and change our approach and change our attitudes so that young people don't suffer in silence and fear of talking about it, and sadly some even take their own lives as a result of it. We can do a lot in that respect. Secondly, absolutely invest in good quality, immediate talking therapies and support for those going through a crisis. If you've gone through or in the midst of a crisis and you go to your GP and you say, I'm going through a mental health crisis, a good GP would do something for you immediately. A less effective GP would say, put you on a waiting list, talking therapy in a month's time, or seeing a psychiatrist in 6 weeks' time, or something like that. It's got to be there and available and immediate, but also as a society recognise where levels of stress come from, through poverty, bad wages, bad housing, all those things.
So you've now heard both men speak for the last couple of hours, actually. Our audience here of Labour supporters, Labour members, Labour voters, people who say they may vote Labour in the future. Thank you for your contributions as well, and your respect. Really appreciate that this morning. We've divided you up. This is the section of people who said they wanted to come along today to see if they could make up their mind. So I'd like to ask you, if you think you have reached a conclusion and you are now going to support either Owen Smith or the incumbent Jeremy Corbyn, could I ask you to walk to the relevant sections, the Owen Smith section or the Jeremy Corbyn section right now? And I will describe this for listeners on the radio. So, okay. Most people in the undecided section have moved and swelled the ranks of the Jeremy Corbyn supporters. Right, and let's hear why.
Hi, I'm Phil. I've always voted Tory until the last election, and I think the policies about child mental issues is massive for myself.
OK, I'm going to pause you there, Phil. I just want to hear why people have moved over here. Yes, hello, quick.
At the very beginning, Owen Smith was concerned about his
children's GCSE results, and he's got an amazing CV, but Jeremy Corbyn is concerned about campaigning for everybody in the community.
All right, okay.
Even though I agree with Owen Smith about Trident and Brexit, I'm a real communitarian.
Thank you, sir. This is an Owen Smith supporter.
I'm Leon. I've been really impressed by the debate by both candidates. Both have a lot to offer. I think there's something about leading a movement and a campaign and leading a party or leading a nation. I think they're different issues, and I respect Jeremy Corbyn, but I think my heart is with Owen Smith.
All right. Okay. You've got 10 seconds. Why haven't you made up your mind, and what will persuade you either way?
I'm still not convinced. I started off unconvinced. You're two genuine blokes, really nice. I'd be happy to spend the evening with you in the pub. But I am now pretty much decided that I'm going to abstain from voting.
Okay, all right. On that note, got to abstain. You can talk more after the break. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Owen Smith. Thank you, Jeremy Corbyn.